Press.
All right, good morning, everyone. I'd like to call this meeting at 9:30 a.m. Andrew, can we please have a roll call?
Treasurer Diosa.
Here.
Dean Rondo.
Here.
Mark Carullo.
Here.
Michael Cicerone.
Here.
Joe Codiga.
Here.
Matthew Howard.
Here.
Yen Lee.
Here.
Elena Mertis is absent. Oops. William Murray.
Here.
Andrew Nada. Here. Alan Palazzo.
Here.
Sandra Paquette is absent. Dr. Shaw Hughes is absent. Michael Toohey.
Here.
You have a quorum.
Excellent. Thank you so much. I want to take the opportunity to welcome our newest board member, John Monse Jr. to the board. Welcome. We will value your input and anything you could do to help us make our organization stronger and, more importantly, stay true to our commitment of our active and retired members. So if you please can stand. So raise your right hand. I state your name.
I, John Mons,
Do solemnly affirm
solemnly affirm
that I will faithfully and impartially
that I will faithfully and impartially
discharge my duties as a member
discharge my duties as a member
of the Retirement Board
of the Retirement Board
according to the best of my ability,
according to the best of my abilities,
and that I will support the Constitution
and that I will support the Constitution
and laws of the state
and the laws of the state
and the Constitution of the United States.
and the Constitution of the United States.
This affirmation I make
This affirmation I make
and give upon the peril
and give upon the peril
of the penalty of perjury.
of the penalty of perjury.
Congratulations.
Thank you, sir. Appreciate it.
Thank you so much. Excellent. We will now move on to the approval of the draft meeting minutes of June 10, 2026 of the Retirement Board meeting.
I'll move approval.
Second. Any comments or edits? Not seeing that. All in favor, vote aye.
Aye.
So moved. Thank you. We will now ask Andrew for his report.
Great, thank you. There's kind of two main items in my report. One, thank you for going through our process. This is not the main agenda. Thank you for going through our process on why we upgraded the router and the internet access. I mentioned we'll be upgrading Convene as well, so you're welcome to set up an appointment with IT for that. We'll send out another reminder on that. But my two agenda items is we're having an annual review for this board of the defined contribution plan. So we have several members that introduce themselves from TIAA who have flown in for this, and we'll be having some operational meetings this afternoon. Secondly, we'll be getting a legislative update from Rob Craven. Before I turn it over to you, Larry, to make your introductions, I want to call out three people. Alex, could you kind of raise your hand or stand up? Alex works for Treasury, and she kind of manages the different programs that are kind of member driven. So that would include the 401A plan, but also the 529 plan. So she does a lot of educating people on our member present plans. And then just, I think sometimes on our board, we don't have a long time to talk about like process and how things go. Every investment that State Investment Commission makes has two parts to it. They have a staff recommendation, so they have to think it's a good investment. They also then have to have a consultant recommendation that matches or firms. And so Capital Cities has been a long time consultant to the State Investment Commission, and what they do is kind of hold groups like TIAA or people in the 457 plan or other plans sort of accountable to have the right investment lineup. So that's why it's appropriate that Susan and Tiffany from Capital Cities, they have flown in for our meeting. That they're kind of lurking over TIAA, making sure they get everything right. They're kind of working on our behalf. And then finally, this part of the presentation, we're going to kind of, as I mentioned early, we were originally going to do this in July. This is intended to have two parts. One, I think as a board, we're required to have some regular reporting on the defined contribution plan. Then I also think it's just valuable to have some discussion on it. So we've built this in to be a presentation, but also have time for question and answer. So we can count this a little bit towards some of our continuing education goals. With that, I'll turn it to you, Larry, and you can introduce your team.
Sure. And I'd also like to note that Sandra Paquette has. Sorry.
Hi, I'll kick things off. Good morning, everybody. Thank you to Treasurer Diosa and the board and everybody here. And to those behind us, I apologize because we've seen the back of our heads the whole time, but we'll try to turn around. Thank you so much for having us from TIAA here today. We're thrilled to be able to speak with you and we're thrilled to be able to serve the state of Rhode Island. I'm a proud native Rhode Islander myself, just so you know that. This is familiar territory for me. And my stepmother just recently retired from the state system as a state employee, so thank you.
I hope it was a great experience.
Yeah, well, thank you for that as well. So I'm just gonna go over the agenda that we have for you today. Just by way of introduction, Lindsay Hartman and I oversee the New England territory for TIAA's business. Larry Nielsen is the relationship manager for the state of Rhode Island plan. And Matt Gross is our investment specialist. So the three of us will be talking about various agenda items with you today. And I just wanted to review the agenda first, just to, that's what we've been asked to present, just to see if there's any reaction or adds to that. Notice we're sharing.
Thank you for the presentation of.
Yeah. Either way. First, we're just gonna do an overview of the retirement plan. Second, we're gonna talk about plan demographics. Third, we're gonna talk about the default investment structure, the investment plan. And lastly, we're gonna talk about participant education, how we educate the employees within the plan. Any adds or requests to that agenda in the room? Okay, we will get started and I'm gonna turn it over to the team.
Thank you. I'm Larry Nielsen. I've had the pleasure of working with Andrew's team, Alex, for the last year and a half on this plan, and it's been fun. There's never a dull day in the retirement world, with a lot of state systems, but very excited to be here. I do think you have an amazing retirement benefit. And please, as I'm talking, if you have any questions, please jump in. I get kind of excited about this. I nerd out on retirement plans. I've been doing it pretty much my entire adult life. When I think about the Rhode Island retirement plan, if you can go 2 slides up, please. If you look at the upper left-hand corner of this slide, we're kind of going to start up there. The Rhode Island retirement program has 3 key plans in it. There's 2 key pillars, the DB plan, the 401A plan that we're going to talk about today. And then there's also a 457 plan, which is more commonly called the deferred comp plan that allows people to save additional money over and above. Over the last 20 years, DB plans have been going away. And with a lot of consternation, people, get upset when you take their DB money away. I'm sure that was not a popular decision in this state. It isn't anywhere. But frankly, I think the way your plan is designed, in my experience, if I was designing a plan, this is how I would do it. I think you have the lifetime income covered with your DB portion of the plan, and the 401A portion gives employees incredible flexibility with their retirement. One of the downsides of a DB plan is the state or the employer is deciding when an employee retires. You put a retirement age on there, and whether that employee wants to retire at age 60 or 70, they're generally retiring, whenever that plan as they hit full retirement. I'm sure we've all had a family member, so we know, say, hey, it doesn't pay for me to work anymore. They may have wanted to work, but they hit that magic age of 65, 67, and they end up, saying it doesn't make sense. With the advent of the 401A, it gives your employees increased flexibility. They can retire earlier if they want to. They could choose to work later. We're seeing people, and we here at TIAA, we're seeing people work well into their 70s, being productive members, and I don't think there's any real reason to force people out of the workforce with the benefit. The other benefits of the 401A plan is you get to take, experience in the market. We've had unprecedented bull markets the last several years. DB plan, you don't get to, keep up with inflation in terms of retirement savings and benefits. But the downside, nothing's perfect. And one of the things that a DC plan does face challenges with plan sponsors is you need your employees to be engaged in the retirement process. They need to make choices. What investments I'm going to choose, how much money I'm going to put in. And that's why, as you move further down the left, one of the big things that we've done with this plan in conjunction with the state of Rhode Island is modernized it in 2022 by implementing a new default fund. You know, why is a default fund important? That's going to talk a little bit about it in a minute, but people do not take action in these plans. We see it across every industry, every type of plan. Over 80% of people choose to default, and by choose meaning they do nothing. So we structured this, you know, what I like to call cutting edge default that Rhode Island implemented in 2022, and Matt's going to go over how that's really getting their employees in a good spot. The other thing that the treasurer's office has really been challenging us on is how do we educate Rhode Island employees to take an active role in this retirement plan. Lindsay's going to end today with our education plan. It's not easy. You know, you have people all over the state, different locations, they're quite busy. So how do we get these people to take action when they need to? And we're going to talk a little bit about that later. As far as the plan metrics, can you send that over? The center of the screen, most state employees are eligible for this 401A program. You know, there are some exceptions. And as far as the vesting goes, employee contributions, you'll see the schedule in the middle here of how much an employee is mandated to put into this plan are always 100% vested. It is always their money when they leave. Employer contributions have a 3-year vesting schedule. So if people leave early, that money does go back to the state. Do you have a question? Oh. All right, before we move on to the next slide, any questions, comments? So how's the plan doing? I'm sorry.
I don't know if you can answer this, but just for the sake of clarity, if someone is in the defined contribution plan, do they still follow the same retirement regulations? Because you had mentioned retiring earlier. How does that affect our members?
Sure. So, unless specifically carved out by statute, everyone who is eligible to be in the defined benefit plan is eligible to be in the 401A plan. In fact, must be.
That's not what she had.
Oh, but so then, you know, you have a set date, you know, based on your schedule of when you're eligible, what age you're eligible to draw your annuity in
Right.
the defined benefit plan, but you can draw from your 401A sooner than that if you leave state service. So there are a number of people who leave state service. They're not yet at their full Social Security retirement age, but they could access some funds that would either be in their 401A or 457.
Okay, so what you're saying is that the 95 rule, as it is right now, still stands, but people who choose to retire prior to that can take the benefits from their 401. Yeah. Thank you.
Right, next slide, please. So how's the plan doing? As of June 30th, the plan just crossed $3 billion in assets, which is pretty wild when you think about it. In 2012, this plan started at $0. As little as 5 years ago, it was barely over $1.5 billion, so it's doubled in size in the last 5 years. This past quarter, we had great market activity. The plan grew almost 11% in the last 3 months, from 2.7 billion to 3 billion. The other thing that call out here, when you see contributions and distributions, contributions to the plan are larger than the distributions. We call that net flows. They're positive net flows going into the plan, which is always a healthy sign that plan will continue to grow. And why is growth important? As plans get bigger, you get economies of scale. You get cheaper investments for your employees. Record keeping costs get spread out amongst more people. It makes the plan more efficient with your employees' money. So all the news there. On the right side, we have a list of the assets in the plan as of June 30th. The assets are, you know, some of the most cost-efficient assets that exist. They're a mixture of State Street CITs. Is everyone familiar with the difference between a CIT and a traditional mutual fund is? So a CIT is only available in large retirement programs for the most part. It's a collective investment trust. They operate just like a mutual fund, but they have fewer disclosure requirements. They don't have a ticker symbol, so you can't look them up on, you know, E-Trade or something, but they function exactly like a mutual fund, but generally at much lower expenses. An individual cannot buy them on their own in a retail market. Rhode Island, because of their size and scale, has the ability to put these in the plan and again, offer the lowest cost investments that are available to employees. In addition to the CITs, you'll see 2 TIAA funds in there. One's a stable value fund and one is a TIAA traditional. which is a fixed annuity. Matt's going to talk a little bit about that in a moment. And then we have some Vanguard options on the cash side, as well as a CIT. Very good split amongst the funds. You know, one of the things I look when I see these is there, you know, all the money going to one fund, or there are funds on the menu. We see this a lot with plans where, you know, the employer pays a lot of money to the cap cities of the world. The consultants develop this best-in-class fund lineup and no one's using it. And the way we've designed this plan, that we're not seeing that here. So good news all around. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Matt, and Matt's going to talk about the default option with plan, Default Retirement Plus.
I appreciate it. Matt DeCrose, all solutions at TIAA. I was just talking to Roxanne earlier, and we figured out coming down here for a little over a decade now with the Rhode Island plan, which has been great. So we've seen it go through a lot of transition, and obviously the largest piece I think of that transition was changing the default investment a few years ago now, back in 2022. Did you say?
Yep.
Yeah. And actually, I was just looking at the asset totals, and it's amazing. When we came in here and did that, I mean, the numbers were a lot. I mean, they were still large, but they're a lot larger today, which I think is it's a testament to what you all are doing for your members. I think it's really wonderful. Larry alluded to this earlier, but the reason the default is so important in any plan, not just the government plan, is because of behavior. Any of the retirement plans that we work with at TIAA, Larry said, I think north of 75–80% of those flows. So those are people who either sign up for their retirement plan or they get auto enrolled into a retirement plan. Those dollars go to the default. So that means that those folks do not make an election as to how they want their retirement dollars invested. So it becomes incumbent upon committees at those individual institutions to figure out how do we put that money to work. And what's interesting about that is if we were to re-enroll all the plans that we record keep today. So we basically said, anybody who's invested in any of these plans, you have to make you have to make an election, excuse me. Otherwise, we're going to put you in the default. We would probably see north of 90% of those dollars in the default. So I mentioned that only to just give a backdrop of how important the default is and how strong the behavioral aspect of it is. So that's sort of the first piece of this to think about. The second piece is that the default across all retirement plans has largely been an evolution. And so when I first started at TIAA, again, over a decade ago, a lot of our clients were still defaulting their participants and their members into money market funds. And the idea that money market funds carry with them very little risk, right? Typically we don't see balances go down. It would be very rare for that to happen. But there's not a lot of expected return, right? You don't get a lot of growth in a money market fund because of the types of assets that they're invested in. We don't really see that so much today because folks in money market funds simply aren't growing their savings fast enough for retirement. So, I could be in something that's very stable, but if I'm not growing my capital enough, I'm not going to have enough money at retirement to potentially live the retirement lifestyle that people live. And so the transition away from money market has largely been to target date funds. Target date funds, which is what the state used up until 2022, they used a CIT version, which we'll talk about, have been an extremely important innovation in the space, right? Because target date funds, for those who aren't familiar, are a combination of equity and bonds or stocks and bonds, right? And they basically say, my allocation to stocks versus bonds is going to be a function of my age. So when I'm younger, so I'm in my 20s and my 30s, I'm going to own predominantly stocks, right? Because the risk when I'm in my 20s and 30s is not a 20% drawdown in the market. Right? I haven't saved a lot of money yet, presumably, and I'm also going to work for another 20–30 years. And so, what happens in the market or in the stock market today really isn't of large consequence to them. However, if I'm in my 50s or my 60s and I'm approaching retirement, all of a sudden now if the S&P 500 drops 20%, that's a much bigger deal for somebody approaching retirement. It means that potentially I have to take less or I have to work longer, right? And so the target date fund says, okay, as I get closer to retirement, we're going to diversify the position away from something with more expected return like a stock to something with less expected return like a bond, but that is a little more, the potential for capital drawdown is historically been less in bonds. And so that's great, right? The problem with that is twofold, and this is one of the reasons the state moved it away from the simple target date fund. First, it's simply a function of my age. So we assume that every 59-year-old, for example, is the same, when we know they're not. People's situations are largely different. Maybe I have a spouse with a defined benefit plan. In the case of the state and other government plans, there is a defined benefit component, so that was a factor in figure out what the appropriate default fund should be. So that's the first issue, and we can address that now, sort of with these enhanced defaults that we'll talk about. The second piece is if I choose a target date fund, whether I choose, a Nuveen target date fund or a Vanguard target date fund or a State Street target date fund, whatever it is, BlackRock, I basically inherit all of the underlying funds that make up that target date fund. So a target date fund is just a wrapper, and under that wrapper is a bunch of stock mutual funds or CIPs and bond mutual funds or CIPs. And so the tricky part with that, and where we've seen a lot of our plans, including the state, evolve away from that is maybe I don't want all Vanguard funds under my Vanguard fund. Maybe I like some of their equity funds, but I don't necessarily like their bond funds or whatever. And so what TIAA has done, we can go to the next slide here and give an overview. Is we've created, and by the way, some of our competitors have created similar offers. But we're one of the first with the space, and essentially what we've done is create not a product, but a custom record keeping solution. So at the heart, we're a record keeper, right? We send statements to keep track of all the balances in everybody's retirement plans and do all the accounting and so forth. And essentially what we're calling Retire Plus is the next generation default in our view, at least for our clients. And what it is a custom record keeping enhancement that allows a client, typically with the help of an advisor or otherwise, to select a group of investments that we will record keep as a default solution. And so, for example, let's say you have, again, just because before the state was using Vanguard, you have a Vanguard target date fund, and under that, like I said, is all a number of Vanguard equity funds and Vanguard bond funds. Let's say I like the equity funds, but I don't like the bond funds. Previously, there was no way just to trade out of those bond funds and keep the equity funds, right? With these next generation vaults, you can do that. You can say, hey, maybe I'll have a Vanguard fund that I did my, US equity exposure. But maybe I'll have a State Street fund for my international equity exposure and maybe a PIMCO fund exposure. And so essentially in the same way that in retirement plans create a menu of best in class options for their participants, their members in this case, you can do the same thing in your default. And you can also, if one of those funds underperforms, just change one of those funds. So previously you had to trade the entire target dates fund solution. But now you can just say, okay, the equity component has underperformed where we think it should be. We're just going to swap out that component and keep everything else. So there's a lot of flexibility in moving towards these new solutions. Retire Plus, which is what we call our version of that, and that's what the state is using for their default fund now, has grown quite a bit in the TIAA platform. So we'll have about 1,000 institutional clients, including Rhode Island, at the end of the year. In about 80 billion, 85 billion in model assets. And so the reason for that is firstly what I just said about the flexibility to choose custom investments or to mix and match, choose more efficient investments, and then have the control to remove individual investments and then add them over time, but also cost. And so that was a huge factor in why the state ended up moving to Retire Plus instead of a Vanguard target date fund. So how does that shake out? I'm happy to give an example of that at a high level. And by the way, if there are any questions, feel free to stop me. I'm always happy to make it conversational. So the way essentially, and this is so the slide on the screen here is sort of what I was just talking about. So you look at the Trivial Pursuit sort of pie chart on the screen. And essentially that's what makes up your target date fund. And so the difference between sort of the Vanguard target date fund, all of those little pieces of pie would be Vanguard slices, right? They'd all be Vanguard funds. Now the state has the ability to choose whichever funds they want. So in this case, they're using State Street funds, right? Because the State Street funds were more cost effective essentially than the Vanguard funds. And they were very similar in nature to what they give you exposure to. And so as a function of that, the state was able to bring down overall costs.
Is a question.
Oh, I'm sorry, go ahead.
Just quick
Yeah,
question.
sure.
You're talking about retire plus can have a auto redundancy function?
Yeah.
How that works?
Yeah, sure. So occasionally you need to rebalance these funds, and that's the same with target date funds as well, because let's say you buy a mix of 50% stocks, 50% bonds today. But the stock market rallies a whole bunch. And so now where you had 50-50 at the time of purchase, your stock position is now much bigger than 50% relative to bonds. And so occasionally you'll have to rebalance those positions. The way that Retire Plus does it, and that we're doing it here, is annually on a participant's birthday. And so the idea is that occasionally we need to go back for a participant and make sure that they're holding the correct allocation to stocks versus bonds. That makes sense? That is,
That's automatic.
automatic.
Thank you.
And again, that's part of really what this is, why it's not a product, it's a customer record keeping enhancement, that we're keeping track of all these balances. And that's part of the functionality that we're able to do. The other thing I just want to mention quickly is that the thing I described initially with target date funds and how they work is what we call a glide path. So when you're younger, you're in a more aggressive or more stock heavy position, and then you glide to a more conservative position as you get closer to retirement. That's standard in the industry for any target date fund you would have. And that's really what we're showing on the screen here. You can see on the x-axis, we have how somebody, how long somebody has to retire at their age, essentially. It's just a way to frame that. And then the equity exposure on the y-axis. And you can see that as you get closer to retirement, obviously the equity position, which is the same stocks, equity and stocks, is the same thing. You get a more conservative position. The difference in Retire Plus is that whereas a target date fund only gives you one glide path, so you're 50 and this is the allocation you're in, there's actually a mechanism in Retire Plus for somebody to answer more questions or give us more information. So how that would work in practice is that when you sign up for your retirement plan, you can do nothing and you get defaulted onto the default glide path the way you would have in a target date fund. It's very simple, very similar. Or there's an option automated on the screen that'll say, customize a little bit more. And then you'll have to answer a series of very simple questions. They're not financial questions, they're more emotional questions. How would you feel if your balance did X versus Y? The whole goal of this is that we're trying to determine somebody's risk tolerance. Are they more conservative? Are they more aggressive? What's their situation that may dictate that, I'm 44 years old, and maybe my allocation should be more conservative than another 44-year-olds because of some personal risk preference. And so that's why you see three different curves on the screen, is that, you can have three individuals who are my age, 44 years old, and they could be in three different allocations. And there's no mechanism for that essentially in a standard target, which is just a nice feature of this.
So that's more or less interactive,
Correct.
and then is it AI that determines that?
No, it's actually, so it's a good question. So we have what we call a risk tolerance questionnaire. And it's a standard set of questions. And I think the state has them, but we can and essentially there's a scoring rubric based on the responses. So based on the numerical score would dictate, the system would come back and say, hey, Matt, you're 44, but rather than be on a moderate glide path, we think you should be on a conservative glide path. Now, I don't have to accept that recommendation. It's also important to mention, and even though it's not ERSRI, once you choose to customize your allocation, you are technically, in the eyes of the regulators, no more a defaulter. So you are now out of the default once you have done anything to alter your allocation.
So can you revert back?
Absolutely, anytime. Yeah, these are all, that's a good question. I'm glad you said that. Fully liquid, the same way as, and there is an insurance component to this, and we'll talk about that in a second. Typically, insurance is not fully liquid, but in this case, it is fully liquid to participants, so they get their money whenever they want. Okay, thank you. And actually, that's a good transition, so we'll go into that. So I sort of hit on two of the three major elements on how this is different from a standard target date fund. The other major piece of this is that the state chose to trade away from some of their bond exposure and into a liquid version of our fixed account. So what's a fixed account? Fixed account is a fixed annuity. So fixed annuity, and I didn't come from the insurance business originally, so it took me a while to get up to speed on all this stuff.
Fixed annuity serves a couple functions. It serves a function of retirement where somebody can buy an annuity from TIAA and we will pay them every month for as long as they live, as long as the spouse lives. Talk about sort of how that works. But really in the context of this plan, we're thinking about it more as an accumulation vehicle. There is an income option for people who want it, but really the decision, or I should say, a big part of the decision was made sort of how does this thing function relative to bonds? It's a bond supplement alternate. And the reason for that is that the way TI traditional works in accumulation is that we are always crediting some positive rate of return. How are we able to do that? We're able to do it because we have a large investment portfolio. It's 300 billion that sits behind TIA traditional, and it holds a bunch of assets, and the assets are primarily bonds. So when we get a flow or somebody makes an investment into TI traditional, that's a liability, right? Because we have to promising them to pay them, guaranteeing them some positive rate of return. That's a liability. So we have to go buy an asset to back the liability. And essentially, majority of the assets are fixed income or bonds that we go and match those liabilities. The reason that we don't have to post negative returns is because we don't mark the book to market, right? So a lot of times when you go buy a bond mutual fund, you might see negative returns to the bond mutual fund because interest rates go up, the bonds in that portfolio are worth less. And so when they get marked down, the end user of that or the owner of that mutual fund is going to see negative performance. And so that's the way previously it worked in the retirement plan. One of the benefits of this is because we don't have to do that because we're holding all of these positions to maturity. That's why we don't have to mark them down. We're able to always credit that positive rate of return. And when we can do that, it gives to, get away from the investment ease, it gives participants more visibility over how much they're going to have at retirement. So if you think about 2022, which actually was a great year to do this when the state did it, the S&P 500 was down about 20% or so in 2022. Typically, stocks and bonds are inversely correlated. So typically when the stock market goes down, a lot of times you'll see a rally in the bond market. Happy to get into why, but that's just historically how it's been. 2022 was unique in that the correlation between stocks and bonds was actually positive. And so the S&P 500 was down, call it 20%, but the Barclays aggregate, which was essentially the bond exposure that you had in your Vanguard target date fund, was also down about 13%. And so that's a real problem for somebody approaching retirement, right? Because now all of a sudden they've lost both on the bond and on the stock side. And so they have essentially more, less money, and so they either have to work longer to wait for those positions to rally or they take less. Whereas what's interesting about sort of supplementing this with liquid TI traditional is that liquid TI traditional had a positive return in 2022 because it always has a positive return, right? So it's a different type of exposure. So then the question for the state essentially was, well, how has it performed relative to bonds historically? And what the state did, what the state did was quite a bit of quite a bit of research that I helped them with to look at monthly returns of TI traditional versus Barclays aggregate. Say, okay, it's great that you're always posting a positive rate of return, but how do those look at? Thank you so much relative to bond. Thank you. And so that was a huge piece of it. So you can see here on the screen, I call the chart on the left the EKG chart. Affectionately.
You'd be in a lot of trouble.
Yeah.
You just made me nervous.
I'm glad. All right.
If it looks like that, I got you.
But you can see that the chart on the left is actually monthly returns of Barclays aggregate. So Barclays aggregate is sort of the S&P 500 for the lack of a better explanation of bonds, right? It's just a bond index that people follow to say this is sort of, intermediate term and, credit. And people think about fixed income, which is another word for bonds, as being fixed. Like I can't lose money in bonds, right? That's not true. You can see that on the screen here. So this is 20 or 30 years. Let's call it 20 years of monthly returns for the Barclays aggregate. You can see there's any month in particular where you may have made 2%, but you might have lost 2%, right? And this is exactly what I was just talking about in 2022. And so the blue line on there is liquid TI traditional. So again, liquid to participants, so they can get their money whenever they want. It's not locked up. And you can see that blue line never crosses below zero. And again, that's because we have guaranteed crediting rates that we're obligated to pay. I can talk about how we ensure that we're always able to pay those things, especially we have to reserve for that liability. And I'll get into our credit ratings in a second. But if you flip over to the other chart there on the right, now you can say, okay, well, that's great if your rate never went below zero, but historically, how has it performed relative? And this is a really simplistic look at this, but the folks on the SIC and others at the time who were doing this did really in-depth looks of sort of expected return, expected risk, really got very granular, but you can see here that, over time, liquid traditional have been in the ballpark of bonds. And that's the whole idea. Right now, it's outperforming bonds, but it's been a very, very difficult past few years for liquid bond positions. So I don't know that you can expect that over.
Yes, I'm going to ask a very basic question because we represent retirees.
Yep.
We're elected and many of them are watching and future retirees as well. All right, I've just signed up. I'm going to teach. And I have to choose my defined contribution plan at the time when I sign up. Do I have access to all of the information that you have just given us? How is that given to me as a new person, a new member?
It's a great question. So the answer is yes. So when you go to our microsite, which is branded, I believe, with the Rhode Island.
Yeah.
So it's you can Google, or I think how do we disseminate the link?
ERSRI.
Yeah.
I forget the title of the.
It's a great segue though, because we're gonna talk
Yeah.
about.
Again, you have to understand that I.
Yeah, I get that question.
But to answer your question directly, yes. So they go to this website and there are fact sheets with all of the investments that I just talked about. So if I'm in the, Retire Plus 2065 moderate fund, I can go click on that fact sheet and say, okay, here are all the underlying investments that make up this custom target date fund, including TIAA traditional, which I just talked about. And you can click on those things and get fact sheets for all those individual investments as well. So as granular as you want to get, or for all the information that I just talked about, it's available and pretty easily accessible for participants or members.
So we're gonna move on if it's okay.
Yeah.
Just to go a couple slides up, if you don't mind, to how the plan is doing. One more. I'm sorry. One more after that. So how is this default fund being utilized? Right now, 98% of Rhode Island people are still in this default fund. We're seeing it, and that's not abnormal. I have a handful of clients that use this. One of our very first clients at TIAA that implemented this 7 years ago still has 95% of their people in it, and they, like Rhode Island, do everything they can to educate people. People get in it, and one of the things we're tracking is the personalization rate. How many people have completed that 5-question questionnaire that he's talking about, and we're at 7% right now for Rhode Island.
That's pretty standard.
Pretty standard, yeah. The best I've seen is 20%, and again, that's a client that's had this service for going on 8 years now, and that's where working with the treasurer's team. How do we get every employee to take an active role? Make sure they're in the right portfolio, make sure that their money's doing what they should be. Real quick, if you can go to the next screen, we contract with Morningstar, do what's called a plan outcome assessment. And what Morningstar does as an independent third party is they run based on everyone's salary, looks at their investments, and it looks at some key behaviors. Are people managing their money in the right way based on what Morningstar would recommend? Not what TIAA would recommend, but what Morningstar would recommend. And because of it's a miracle, but there's 98% of people in these models, 97% of people are managing their money the right way, because these models are designed to be managed, how someone should. And then the other thing, and that's best in class.
The 97, is that reflective of that standard automatic?
The default.
Yep, the default.
Yeah, no, got it.
Yeah.
Correct.
Okay.
Yes, and that's why the default, it's designed to put, I worked in operations for most of my career, like, let's build something that's for 80% of people, can't build something perfect for everyone. This default's built for the masses. And right now we're seeing 97% of people using the most efficient investment option based on their age.
So real quick, two things. From an educational standpoint, do you think that people aren't using the customizing tool because they don't know it's there?
I think that's a little bit, but yes.
And the second question of that would be, hypothetical, listen, I'm not the most. I'm not you guys, right? If I were to go on there and try to customize it in a way that would be detrimental to me, is there a stopgap in there that says, hey, like, is this really the route you want to take, or is it just kind of let you have free reign over?
The answer is no, and it's for the same reason that if you just go to the core, like you have the option to go to the core menu and choose 100% money market or 100% S&P 500, and that might not be right for you either. But like I said before, once you choose to customize, you're out of the default. So in terms of the purview of, how does the committee choose to get those dollars to work? Once you've left that, then now maybe it's a question for engagement, and we have some tools that we can look at where people's applications might be a little wonky. But at the point of somebody making that decision, know that they have free reign to do that.
That's a perfect time to transition, I think, to our last part. Time check, we're 10:15.
Yeah, sorry, I ran a little.
No, I think
I
that's.
think going to the education piece would be appropriate now.
Yeah, so let's in our last 5 minutes hit what is a very important part of it, which is the member education, the plan education piece. So I think what hopefully the message you just got from what we just went over is we think you have a great default on a lot of it, really best in class. The plan is doing well, very well, and most employees default to it. And the good news is you have an excellent best in class default. So that is a good thing if you're defaulting. That doesn't mean we're not really dedicated to educating people. And I know that the treasurer certainly and the state are very passionate about educating the members, educating everyone so they can learn more about it and make different choices outside of the default. So I just wanted to hit a couple things that we're doing in that space. That's something we're very passionate about as well. So we're all on the same page there. We know that financial literacy and members taking an active role in the retirement plan is very important to all of you. So we developed, along with the treasurer's office, Alex, Andrew and team, a comprehensive education plan. And that's on one side for the members, individuals, and on the other side for all the benefit contacts at the various locations, the state municipal locations throughout the state. So I just want to hit a couple of highlights of that for you so you can get a sense of resources that are available. One is you see the slide here is about our ecosystem. So I'll just give you the punchline of that is we really set up resources so that however you like to interact, you can interact. You can get very granular, like Matt said, and find all of this stuff on the website. Everything's available digitally. We also have counselors who meet with everybody at various locations throughout the state. So we have virtual consultants, and that's not an AI person, that's like a person just on Zoom. We have consultants that are in person, in Warwick, and then recently through partnership with and a lot of work with the treasurer's office, we've expanded that to send them to different locations. It is working. The appointments are filling up, people are engaging more, so we thank you for that. We're glad to see that. We know it's important to you. We find that we measure the numbers. What are the employees in Rhode Island looking for? And 70% are looking for virtual appointments, which is not a surprise. We see this trend everywhere, especially since after COVID, people kind of got used to that. So we give, what everybody is preferring. So we've really staffed up our virtual financial consultants to meet that type of demand. We just hired 100 of them. And not just for Rhode Island, like through the whole company. I mean, the demand is there. This is the trend. So we want to provide the type of resources that you want. And some people want to sit face to face, right? Some people want to do it over Zoom. They might want to bring a family member with them. Some people want to go online and do it themselves. The point is we're making all of those channels available so people can, and we're hoping to engage people, and it is working. More and more people are engaged. Next thing I will hit is so it's on one side, we're doing a lot to try to engage more members individually. The other side of it is all of the benefits contacts at the various municipal and state sites throughout the state. When somebody has a question, usually the first person they go to is the person they work with who happens to be in charge of the benefits. They ask the question, right? So what we have done in close partnership with the treasurer's office is really get very intentional about educating them so that they can be kind of like a train the trainer type of thing. So they can answer some of the common questions that come across to help employees more quickly and direct them to all of the resources. And I think that is working really nicely too, because it's really helping to educate so many people more quickly. We hold a quarterly Zoom educational meeting. Again, Zoom works better because there's so many locations, where we're educating all of the benefits contacts throughout the various state and municipal sites so that they can disseminate that information to everyone. And we are, actually, if you flip to the next slide, just quickly, our clock here. This is what we're next. This is what's up next that we're working on is this retirement readiness in a box. The concept of this, it's really cool concept. We've been working closely with the treasurer's office on this, is really to just have this resource kit ready to go. So if the benefits contacts at the various state municipal sites get questions, they can then help the members with the way they want to engage. So if they say, oh, I'd like to see a video or on this, or oh, I'd like to read something, they can just reach into this kit and give them the information they want. So this is really, we're excited about this, and with a combination of what we're doing in partnership with the treasurer's office to educate the members on one side with all those various ways they can engage digitally through person to person. And on the other side, what we're doing to educate the benefits contacts at the various state and municipal sites, it's really working and helping to educate more members. And that then result is hopefully more engagement in the plan. And we're seeing that certainly. So with that, we are spot on time at 10:15. So we want to just first see if there's any questions that are in the room that we can answer for you before we wrap up and hand it back. And a big thank you, first of all, for having us here. We're really happy to work with you.
Just
Yes.
a very basic question. What percentage of members are currently engaging in a more active pursuit?
So,
Go ahead.
we do have a 7% who
Right,
have personalized.
Right.
I also, it's not in this deck, but we can run metrics on how many have engaged with our digital tools, and it's about,
right. This
it's
is what
about
I'm wondering with the.
it's
different-
about 5%, which is that's what we see with most clients. It's not great. I mean, we would love to see that number way higher, but that's typically what you see. It's amazing. I like to make the joke, you could default somebody into giving you $100 a month and 80% of people will not take action. Like people just, in today's digital world, they don't take action. So we're fighting against that, not just with Rhode Island, with every one of our clients.
That's an industry issue.
It's it's,
Right.
but that engagement could take on many forms, right? One is, are they engaging to customize it? They're also engaging, they meet with our financial counselors and they might stay in the default. And that happens a lot because they're like, oh, actually, I like this and I'm not going to customize.
And actually, even
Yeah.
before the new enhanced default, north of 90%, 93%, 94% were in the last target date month. So.
Yeah.
And these benefit contacts that you have throughout the system, are they district-wide? Are they based, I mean, the active people would be able to tell me that. Do you know who your benefit consultants are in your school system?
I do,
Yes, okay.
but
If-
they don't know. They don't know about this. I'm not knocking anybody, but if I call my, HR department, my benefits, they're gonna say call TIAA,
And that's,
which is fine.
Yeah.
They don't have anything to do with this.
and this is all part of what we're putting together with this program to help educate them more, because we don't want them to be in a position where they don't know where to go. We want them to be able to send employees to the right place at the right time. So that's part of the reason that we put together this.
And if I, yes,
Yeah.
true. Because again, we are a pension board, we are representing members.
Yes.
And I would venture to say that all this very valuable information that you are presenting to us, maybe 93% of the members are not aware of. And which is why they go into the default plan, because it's obviously the least complicated option to choose. But I think the important thing is that our members are educated
Yes.
in this, and I think you agree with that.
Yeah, and I would say that the treasurer's office agrees as well, and we do, and that's part of the reason we're putting so much, time into the education piece. And it's not just the state of Rhode Island. You see this everywhere. This is the trend in the retirement plan industry, is that people default.
Because to
Try to
have a
educate.
wonderful plan,
Yeah,
and yet 93% of the people are either not aware of it or not accessing it.
It's a failure.
It's not working.
So I will tell
oh,
you,
there's another question, sorry, yes.
Or just observation.
Mhm.
You see that a lot of people are not utilizing what you have. I would think the consultant part of it is very important to get that word out. Because people tend to wanna do one-on-one rather than try to sift through all the information, at least from what I found within my travels and whatever. And that consultant, if they were available, as you say, I'm not disputing it's what you're saying, I think would be very, very helpful to people to know that, and I think it would be more of a comfort level that they're sitting one-on-one with somebody. People don't like to get into big groups and kind of show their ignorance. I'm not saying they have the ignorance, but they don't, they
Unaware.
try to, but that's a good one.
Yeah, we're all on the same page. You're absolutely correct.
So
Yep.
I will say that Alex and her team have done a tremendous amount of work on this front. When I came on this plan a year and a half ago, we were having people come to Warwick and no one was coming to meet with them. We would have 1 or 2 people a day and they have eight open slots a day. We were getting 2 filled. Fast forward to now, they're filling up the day that date's selling out. And it's been through a lot of work, like we're getting lists of people that come meet with your retirement counselors, and we're saying, hey, if you're gonna meet with the retirement counselor, TIAA is gonna be here in 2 days, meet with them too. We are getting out, when we're at locations, working with local contact, put flyers out so people are aware. It is tough because there's not one big human resources department that oversees all of this, or one way to communicate with all these people directly, but we are getting creative. And we're seeing an increased engagement, just quarter over quarter. Our meeting count is up 10% from Q1 to Q2. I think we met with roughly 350 people in Q2, one-on-one. We'd love to see that number be way higher. Do you have a question? I'm sorry.
Well, just an observation. I'm looking at the numbers for this. There's roughly 46,000 in the TIAA side of the house. The combined benefit plan, but what I'm looking at, there's 32,000 actives, roughly the same number of retirees. So you've got a 12,000 delta, and I know the speaker, the treasurer is working on.
You just got a promotion.
I've been on.
This house.
I've been on him for a year and a half for the education. It's in the compass, the data's there. But when we actually had the first presentation a little while ago, it was for actives only. And I would have loved to have participated. And I think somehow that word needs to go out.
Yeah.
And I'm also, having dealt with sailors for 22 years, I operate on the KISS principle. And you talked about going into the system. I don't even need my pension from this system. I'm looking at it for the people who don't understand. They don't understand the rule of 72. They don't understand how they can divide. And you can go into it, but I think your presentations need to be at the KISS level. Keep it simple, silly, and they can determine what they need. Because the lowest common denominator is the audience that you need to address.
Yeah.
That's the way we used to write tech manuals.
Yeah.
That's the way I think you need to
That's
tailor
great
your
feedback. Thank you
presentations.
for sharing that.
And I'm looking forward to the TIA box coming in September. We can probably address that at the September board meeting. And we keep talking about, the years in our presentations, and calendar year 22 was a down year. Was that considered an outlier, as that term is often used on this board? Or is that taken into consideration when we look at the numbers? Because I'm looking at the numbers from the Treasurer's Department for the 10 years, and where we exceed the benchmark. And is that taken into consideration when you make your presentations? Yeah, 22 was a bad year, and COVID, et cetera. But I'm looking at the past 20 years where the market has gone. And I think that needs to be relayed to the members in this system. So just feedback for you
Yeah,
guys.
22 would be an outlier because obviously like I talked about.
Exactly.
Before. But more of an example, right? Just in why some people trade away from that duration. That's the only.
And on the other side, Sandra and I, as she has pointed out, represent the retirees. There are 5 members on this board who represent active teachers and active employees in the MERS side of the house. I think they need to reach out to their people for the education wise. A lot of them are in unions. They can have union hall meetings where you can reach out. We're looking out for retirees and future retirees, but I think the onus for the active members, those 32,000 out there, needs to be fostered by the active members on this board. And I'm just gonna leave it at that.
So generally, the way we operate, at least where I am, is when we get new members, which to your point a minute ago, are not overly concerned about any of this. So you're not gonna get a lot of engagement from a lot of the younger people, right? So we deal in Cranston with a lot of people that come from other jobs, right? We're constantly kind of taking people from other places. And every time I go into a new recruit class and I say, hey, listen, if you have any problems with, money transfer, and if you need information about your pension, all this other stuff, I said, here's my number, here's my email address. And they're like, what are you talking about? I'm like, has anybody logged into ERSRI to like check your numbers, make sure everything's right? And they're like, what's that? So to your point, the demographic that we're going for is probably somewhere in the neighborhood of 14 years and over, and then into retirement, right? But generally, what we like to do is we bring in a host of financial advisors generally, and we say, hey, listen, so like these people will sit down with their financial advisors. They'll go over what you guys are doing along with whatever else is in their world of investments going forward. And they kind of take care of those bits and pieces for them as they go along and they start to progress in their careers and they get closer to retirement. So we do address it to a degree. It's just not direct contact a lot of the times with TIAA current.
Right. So what's
So,
the
could I-
two questions?
Yeah.
Well, we're a little bit long this session, and I want to make sure we don't miss our quorum for the end of the meeting.
Sure. I just have one very quick question. If someone were to contact me and said, okay, how can I reach that benefit contact? What do I tell them? How do we reach the benefit contact?
So we have
An
a,
individual site.
Yes.
we developed a kind of a 1-page document with the phone numbers, the websites. We've given it to the benefit counselors, so that there's materials out there. It's very easy. Here, this type of question, call here. If you want this, call here. If you want to schedule a
Where
meeting.
do I
click
find
here.
that page?
I could, if you, get your email address, I can send it to you.
It's on the ESRI website.
Under,
Yeah, it's on our website, and then you can also, if you call front desk here, we can refer people to the service.
okay, and under what topic? Because the ERSRI is very comprehensive.
I'll send you the link.
Okay.
So in closing,
great.
just wanna say that, TIA is one of the things I've heard about the most through active and retired members. About the complexities, they just don't understand it. And so thanks to Alex, who's back there, which is noted by all of you, it's really our intention to get out there, have a physical presence with someone here from TIA so that they can see people one-on-one, but also go out and have group discussions so that they know that there's someone available, not just a phone, someone on the other side of the phone. So I want to say really thank you to them three. I know, yeah, one last question.
One
We
last
really have to
question.
move on.
Just a quick
Yeah.
question. Since you design such a great, most people choose the default. How would you monitor the default and how often you evaluating the fund for the default?
Do you want to start, Kat?
So one thing is,
Yeah.
the SIC also evaluates this every
Yeah.
year, and so we take a look at it and we approve that glide path.
So it's annual.
It's annual, right, Justin? About annual? Yeah.
We'll do an annual review.
And we have Cap Cities who also takes a
And we
look.
also do performance evaluation reports.
Yeah, just so.
Yeah.
All right, so we're on it.
I'm good. Thank you.
All right, thank you so much.
Thank you for having us.
Thank you.
I'll do this.
Our next topic, which I apologize, Rob, you may get rushed a tiny bit, is our legislative update. So we're now here from Rob Craven, the legislative director for the Office of Treasurer, who works very closely with the retirement system to make sure that we know what's going on. As one thing, I think in the past, sometimes Frank can give this update directly. I asked Rob to come because I think he's even more experienced than I am. So thank you, Rob.
Thank you, Andrew. Good morning. As Andrew said, my name is Rob Craven. I'm the policy director for the general treasurer. So in that capacity, I handle the legislative side of the office. So I was just coming to briefly go over some of the changes that you'll be seeing to the plan as it relates to this body. The first is a treasury-led initiative that empowers this board to revoke the pension of anyone, state employee, teacher, anyone in the system that has committed felony sexual assault related to their job. So previously, the board was allowed to revoke or initiate a pension revocation proceeding for certain financial crimes, embezzlement and theft, for example. But a recent Superior Court decision found that a catch-all provision didn't apply to instances outside of that financial circumstance. So this more clearly empowers this board to initiate revocation proceedings within the Superior Court. So it still goes through the judicial system and is adjudicated with opportunity to present in court, but it allows it nonetheless. The second that I'll discuss, just because it's relatively large changes relative to state police benefits. It was incorporated as part of this year's state budget, specifically Article 3. It amends the final average salary formula from the highest 5 years to the highest 3. This was really a cleanup of some changes that had previously taken place for state employees and teachers in 2024. There were some incomplete changes relative to the state police provision that were rectified. So this change is also retroactive to 2024.
So you're saying that's bringing that in line with other changes that had taken place previously?
That's correct. So 2024, state employees and teachers went to final 3. State troopers were left out, yes. The accrual rate also changes for members after 20 years of service from 2% to 3% if they were hired before July 1st of 2007, and to 3% after 25 years of service for those hired after July 1, 2007. So depending on which side of that line you're hired on, the accrual rate changes for you either 20 years of service or 25 years of service. They still have a capped maximum benefit of 65% under the statute as it exists now. Relative to municipal police officers, there was a change to the police details. Previously, Treasury's interpretation of the existing statute was that municipal police officers were subject to post-retirement restrictions and prohibited from working any state-funded police detail, even if it was for a municipality. So it really was a follow-the-money approach to how we were interpreting that provision. This
When you say state fund, you're talking
DOT dollars mostly, yeah, that's mostly what that ended up being. This new change says that regardless of the source of funding, they're subject to post-retirement cap of 75 days. They're still subject to the 75-day cap, but they can work a detail whether or not the money comes from the municipality or from the state or some other source. This was really an equity-based approach because the officers themselves, when signing up for a detail, wouldn't necessarily know whether the money's coming from the municipality or the state. And it created some friction within the system where, after an officer had already worked this time, they were finding that they had to repay the money to the system. So, a relatively small impact for a meaningful change for those individuals and frankly necessary municipal level. I'm sure Andy can tell you.
Okay.
There was a change to the teacher survivor benefit plan. This is for the surviving spouses of individuals in teaching in systems that don't have Social Security. It's just another means to boost retirement income for individuals in those circumstances. This plan previously has a minimum benefit based on the amount of income that you're receiving. There was a slight bump, a couple $100 bump, depending on the amount that you're receiving that happened. And then going forward, this plan will index similar to the way the COLA cap indexes in the ERSRI and MERS systems generally. And there'll be an annual COLA applied to that as well, again, similar to ERSRI and MERS. But that was also previously in the law. This plan was very overfunded, over 200% funded. So the change itself didn't require a rate adjustment or didn't have a direct pension impact. It is still well overfunded despite this change. I think it's about 150% at this point. So it should still be more than sustainable going forward. There were some changes to the Central Falls legacy plan relative to municipal police and fire. Legacy individuals in that plan are those that were hired before August 31st of 2019, when that city migrated into the municipal employees retirement system. This change effectively codifies provisions of a collective bargaining agreement reached by the city, the police officers union, and the firefighters union up there. We worked closely with both the union and the city to make sure that this was something that was affordable and sustainable for the city.
Is that a benefit enhancement?
It is a benefit enhancement, yeah. So relative to police officers, the collective bargaining agreement says they get MERS-like benefits. So previously, they were actually getting a worse benefit than those in MERS-like. MERS-like. Yeah, so after Central Falls bankruptcy, there were some rather steep cuts to pension benefits that happened there. This catches them up with their colleagues working that were hired after August of.
How's that funded?
Through the city,
So through the city and increased contributions on the city side.
Correct. Yeah, the employer contribution will increase by about $210,000 a year. So on that change, and on the firefighter side, there's a slight change to the accrual of.
Does that fully reinstate the benefit cut or no, it's somewhere?
It's somewhere in between. Yeah.
I think the benefit cut was around 50%.
Yes, it was.
Yes, it was.
And
So
one clarificatory note, we had an admin committee meeting on the two of these where there is a change in contribution.
No, I'm just-
And so we'll vote that later on as well.
And I will add, relative to fire, and police, I should say, their contribution rate previously was 10%. It was changed in the law now to 11.7%, which is consistent with the employee contribution rate for the rest of MERS police and fire units. So there's some, it's not wholly from the city. There's
No, I understand, I think a 50% cut is extreme, and I think that it's reasonable to provide an enhancement to those individuals.
Yeah, as we understand it from the city, they've had retention problems as well, so.
And the legacy plan's a closed plan, so it doesn't impact the numbers.
That's correct. It's probably 60, 70 members at this point. One highlight on a bill that did not pass, just because it does affect post-retirement benefits relative to teachers. For the last 6 years, the legislature, or by executive order, the governor has extended post-retirement permissions for teachers to allow them to teach either 120 or most recently 180 days per school year after they have retired. So this was intended, as evidenced by the bill that passed, to fill teacher shortages in certain municipalities. That was not renewed, so teachers are still able to work post-retirement, but are subject to a 90-day limitation now. They are, under the law, still required to make the contribution. The employer is still required to make the contribution. It's not the employee stops contributing, but this was just intended to disincentivize districts from hiring a retiree just so they didn't have to make the contribution. Two more bills that I'll go over that don't necessarily directly touch the ERSRI, but are within its orbit of retirement. Municipal first responders are no longer required to prove reasonable grounds that there was an emergency that required immediate assistance to receive IOD benefits. Previously, Treasury's interpretation of that bill as it existed was that in order to receive IOD benefits, when somebody was off duty, they had to prove they were responding to an emergency. On duty or off duty, I should say, that they were responding to an emergency. This legislative change just says now when they're off duty, you have to prove immediate need to respond while on duty individuals can apply for frankly more accidental based reasons versus actively responding to a fire or to a crime. And there was also some changes made to the workers' compensation court. The workers' compensation court is now empowered to hear issues concerning original liability for IOD matters and make determinations on maximum medical improvement for occupational disability cases. Again, something that doesn't necessarily directly impact our system, but I think is often seen as going part and parcel with the disability system that you all administer. If there's any questions about this legislation or any other bills that passed or did not pass, I'd be glad to address it.
Questions for Mr. Craven? No, thank you.
Thank you, Rob.
That would conclude my report then.
So I'll now ask for a motion to approve the June 2026 and July 2026 pension. So move. Second by Al. Any comments, questions? Seeing none, all in favor, vote aye.
Aye.
Motion is approved. We'll now go on to the legal counsel report. I'll call on Attorney Sean Bunce for the legal counsel report.
Okay, good morning, everyone. You don't know me. I'm new legal counsel for the board. My name is Attorney Sean Fons, and I'm with the law firm Partridge Snow and On. And at this time, Treasurer, there is no new updates on matters. However, we do have Attorney Patrick McBurney here, who will be making a presentation that should be an executive session. So, as you would do, would take the steps to go into executive session.
Great. Yep, so we'll ask for a vote to go into executive session.
Motion.
Second. All in favor?
Aye.
Right, so we will be moving.
Oh, yeah,
Roll
sorry.
call, go ahead.
Treasurer Diosa,
Yes.
Gene Rondo,
Yes.
Mark Carullo,
Yes.
Michael Cicerone,
Yes.
Joseph Codiga,
Yes.
Matthew Howard,
Yes.
Yen Lee,
Yes.
Elena Burgess absent, John Motz.
Yeah.
William Murray,
Yes.
Andrew Nada,
Yes.
Alan Palazzo,
Yes.
Sandra Paquette,
Yes.
Dr. Shaw Hughes is absent, Michael Toohey.
Yes.
Good, so just to be clear, we'll be going into executive session pursuant to Rhode Island General Laws 42-465. A2 to discuss potential litigation involving the retirement board.
Yeah.
Where's Patrick?
We, Patrick. Actually, I think, Sean could.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah. You can-
All right. All right, Sean.
Okay, so there was a motion taken in executive session regarding pending litigation, and the vote was in the affirmative. And the minutes were sealed.
Great, now we'll move on to committee reports. I'll call on Jean Rondeau for the Administration Audit Risk and Compliance Committee.
The Administration Audit Risk and Compliance Committee met yesterday, August 11th, 2026 at 11 a.m. We voted to accept the implementation of the increased contribution rates, rate updates for the State Police Plan and Central Falls Legacy Plan as a result of enacted 2026 legislation as presented in the pension impact notes.
Right, you call for a.
Yep.
Motion to.
Any questions?
Recommendation.
No, I'll take a motion to approve. Second. All in favor?
Aye.
Who approved that first?
Jean? All right, I'll call on Matt Howard for the Disability Committee report.
So the Disability Committee met July 10th, 2026. And we are recommending approval of items 1 through 7.
Questions for Matt? Seeing none, can I get a second or a motion? Motion and a second by Mr. Tui. All in favor, vote aye.
Aye.
So,
The Disability Committee also met August 7th. And we are also requesting or recommending approval of items 1 through 7.
I have a motion. So moved by Jean, second by Andy. Any comments or questions? One question.
First time there. These are reports that did you just explain what you do? I apologize.
Yeah, absolutely.
I don't mean to bog down.
No, it's good, right?
This is a great thing to do.
I don't wanna look back on the votes. Okay, what did I vote on?
So the Disability Committee met, we had 7 items on the agenda that we hear the cases, we read the information, we discuss everything. We make recommendations to the board, to the full board. Those recommendations are ultimately finalized here. So what I'm doing at this moment is just taking our recommendations from the Disability Committee and recommending that you also approve the same conclusions that we came to on the 7 items from each meeting.
I take it the committee's made up of members from this.
Yes.
The bigger board.
And they go into the depths of each.
I'm not trying to find you down.
No. He's out.
Yeah.
And those reports are incomplete also.
Okay.
Okay.
All right, that leads us to the end of the meeting. I'll call for a motion.
Point of order, I think that vote needs to be.
Oh, sorry,
Sorry.
apologize.
So first, let's finish disability. So that's great. That's a great question.
Yeah.
I think we had a first and a second now.
All in favor?
Aye.
So go ahead, Al.
I have some questions and I'd like them to be addressed at the next meeting on the agenda. During the admin meeting, there was a discussion relative to the pension fund value. And I used the general treasurer's data from the end of fiscal year 25 to the end of fiscal year 26. The pension fund increased in excess of $1.4 billion, exclusive of all benefits and administrative expenses. At least that's according to the data. And I requested the percent funding value of the fund, the percentage that usually comes out in December. I'm doing this because between 30 June and 31 December, this system will lose another 500 people, 1,000 in a year. And they can't wait. So I'd like that to be addressed. I'd also like to have addressed on this chart what essentially is the total plan definition. Because we talk about that, we look at this, we get the percentages, but what essentially is the total plan? Because as I pointed out, our document should be readily available to the 63,000 members of this system, and we should be able to interpret it. There's another question with regard to COLA. I keep hearing it over and over again. And I know the general treasurer has agreed that it is not a COLA, it's an enhanced retirement benefit. If we're gonna look at a COLA, I think we should defer to the Social Security Administration's definition of a COLA. Because people think it's this cost of living adjustment, and it's not. And you can, I don't wanna get into a rolling quorum, but you can just look at for yourself what the Social Security Administration defines as a COLA.
So
And
I would.
I'll just leave it at that.
I would defer to council here, but you've definitely made your request for your agenda, but this is not on today's agenda, so I think we should.
Excuse me, Andrew, I'm a member of this board and I'm making a request that it be placed on the agenda for the September meeting, which is another 30 days. And if you can't do that and function, maybe we should replace you. And I'll just leave it at that, sir.
This is why.
I'm tired of obfuscation and stonewalling. We're members of the board, we're elected, we cannot be removed except for malfeasance, and I'm sure he will reinforce that, and I'm just making that request. People are dying, and I'm not gonna stand by. Thank you, sir.
All right. Noted, is there a motion to adjourn?
So.
Second, Andy, all in favor?
Aye.
Meeting has adjourned.